Hey, friend, welcome to She Said, She Said podcast. I'm your host, Laura Cox Kaplan, and I'm really excited to welcome you to this episode of the podcast. This episode is actually a continuation of our ongoing collaboration series with the Southern Sea for 2026. And in this conversation, we're talking about a topic that I feel like doesn't get talked about nearly enough. My guest is the fabulous Abbey Glass, who is the founder of Abbey Glass, a women's wear brand that she built that's focused on helping women feel both confident and special when they get dressed for the moments that matter most, whether it's a big event at work or a wedding or maybe a night out that calls for something a little extra special. Now, Abbey is a classically trained designer, and her path to getting to that point is really fascinating because she started out on a pre-med track before making a very intentional pivot to fashion. And the journey of how she got here is really fascinating. Abbey built her business the old-fashioned way, one client at a time, largely through word of mouth, by listening closely and by solving a real problem before she began to scale her business. Now, one of the particularly interesting parts of this conversation is when Abbey and I talk about the move from maker or creator into founder. Because when your craft becomes a company, the job changes. You're not just creating anymore, you're also building systems and making decisions and hiring and marketing and trying to stay connected to your customer as you grow. And there's the internal shift that has to happen, the part that people don't always talk about, the mental load associated with that and the constant prioritizing, the background question that so many founders live with. Am I focusing on the right thing? Because there's so many other things to focus on beyond just the creative. This episode, though, friend, is not just for product founders. If you're building a platform, a personal brand, or maybe if you're in the middle of a pivot and trying to turn your experience into what next, I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. So with that, here is episode 356. My conversation with Abbey Glass, part of our ongoing She Said, She Said podcast, the Southern Sea Collaboration Series for 2026. Enjoy. Abbey Glass, welcome to She Said, She Said.
Thank you for having me, Laura. I'm excited to
Well,
be here.
I'm really happy to have you. I have so enjoyed getting to know you at the Southern Sea. And of course, this conversation is part of our She Said, She Said podcast, the Southern Sea Collaboration Series for 2026. And I'm really excited to include you and to talk a bit more about your story and how you built your amazing company, Abbey Glass. So why don't we start there? Let's talk about your origin story. How did you get started?
Yes.
And
So,
well, first of all, what is Abbey Glass for those who might not know? And then a little bit about how you got started.
sure. So, Abbey Glass is an attainable luxury women's wear brand. So, we make women's clothing and we really focus on the art of dressing up and inspiring her and educating her on um, feeling good for life's special occasions. So you get invited to something, you have a big moment at work. We call her the woman of the moment, but we want to meet her where she is and give her amazing resources to feel like she's being taken care of when she's getting dressed in the morning to go to these things. So my background is in custom women's dresses. I actually went to school for women's tailoring. I'm a classically trained fashion designer. I can pattern make. I got graded on how well I could put a zipper into something. That was my finals in college. So I like to say I'm more of a technical founder. And I really built my business on the women that I served and making dresses for specific things that they had that they couldn't find a dress for. So I did no marketing when I started. People would tell their friends. I had some moms of kids I went to high school with who were going to weddings or the Swan Ball or things that were happening in Atlanta, mostly when I came back here right after school. And it just spread really easily, word of mouth, and I think that's sometimes when you have a business is when there's a lot of friction to building a business in general, but when there's not a lot of friction with attaining customers because they love what you're doing and they love your price points and you're solving a problem for them, it kind of organically turns into a business. So it really started from scratch 10 years ago. Working out of my extra bedroom in an apartment I was sharing with my then boyfriend. And it has blossomed into an amazing business. And it's taken a lot of hard work to get here. So,
Yeah, that's
yeah, it's
amazing.
very
How
exciting.
how did you sort of what was that moment when you knew this was really what you wanted to do? I know your grandmother was a big source of inspiration for you, but maybe talk a
Yes.
little bit about that moment.
Yes. I spent hours in my grandparents' basement. My parents would ship us off when they were sick of having us. I'm one of three girls. Um, and my grandparents were the most amazing, doting, loving grandparents. And they lived in New York, and we lived in Atlanta, so we didn't get to see them that much. And over the years, I think my parents figured out the unaccompanied minor thing with Delta, and we ended up being there more and more. My grandmother had a old Singer sewing machine in her basement, along with things that obviously my grandfather acquired, like a pool table. He collected pinball machines. I mean, it was like a arcade down there, and then there
Oh,
was a sewing
fun.
machine in the corner that nobody was about to touch. And one day I started playing around with it, and my grandma um, noticed that I'd taken interest. I was about 10 years old, and she really kind of leaned in with me because I think it's something she loved, and you know, she wanted to nurture my curiosity. And so um I have very fond memories of going through the closets with her to find some old curtain fabrics that, if they had redecorated, they saved like a bolt of, crazy floral fabric. And she let me cut it up. And eventually she took me on little trips to the fabric store, and we would wander through the aisles. It was like floor to ceiling fabrics and like every imaginable print and color. And I don't think the people who worked there had ever seen like a 10-year-old walking through there. It was like for interior designers, or dressmakers. And we would go just spend hours picking things out. And this was her love language. And she, instead of buying me toys, would buy me fabric. And it was the biggest treat. Um, so that I think when you're young and in that phase of life and you're curious, having someone who really can lean into that curiosity with you and unlock opportunity is so important. And I feel really lucky to have, had someone who noticed that spark in me. And it was the way we connected. I mean, it's really hard for like a 60-year-old and a 10-year-old to connect. So that was our way of communicating. And I, she's in my heart, in this business now, at 36 years old. So it's really cool.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's so much nostalgia in your story because I grew up in Texas, and both my grandmother was an excellent seamstress, as was my mother. Both because it was hard to find it was out of necessity. We didn't have a ton of money, and it was also hard to find things back then. You didn't
Mm,
have the internet. You couldn't It was really hard to go shopping. We lived so far away from anywhere. And so, out of necessity, you would need something for a wedding or some kind of special occasion, and you would make it. And so I learned a lot of those skills as a kid, but unfortunately they've atrophied. I may have to like
yeah.
pull out my sewing machine and really frighten my family.
Yeah. They're like, "Are you
But
feeling okay?"
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. But I love that, and I love the nostalgia of that memory with your grandmother and how she sparked this inspiration in you. So maybe play it forward a little bit. At what point, so this was something that you clearly loved to do. At what point did you know that this was going to become a career, and that this was something that you were going to study formally? Because a lot of people in your industry, there are a lot of people that are formally trained, but there are a lot of people who are not. And so maybe talk about the decision to sort of go that route and what
Yeah.
led you there.
I am in a family of academics. So that is how I grew up. I always had to make good grades. I went to, pre-med camp in Boston, my junior year of high school. I
Wow.
was very I was taking all the AP science classes. My parents are both doctors at Emory, and my dad runs the ALS clinic at Emory and has been doing that for over 30 years. So, um, it's been his mission and his life's work. Working to cure ALS, which is it's an uphill battle. Um, and my mom writes grants for nonprofits, but she is a psychologist by training. So, um, fashion was not a word that you heard often in my house growing up. And honestly, I really don't know how creativity became so important to all of the daughters in my family. So my older sister is an architect and my younger sister is an industrial designer. So
Wow.
I think there was something in the water and it just slowly, once one of us felt like we had an opportunity to be creative, I think, you know, sometimes science and art go hand in hand and you kind of go on one side of the line or the other. And so I think there was something really novel and exciting. And I think um, I had a spark that my parents saw and they were very open-minded and supportive. Um, and so I kind of made a series of agreements with them over the years. So one was, okay, you can defer college a year if you go to Emory, do pre-med, but you can take a year off and like go to art school. There was always this like negotiation, but I think slowly as I felt like I was with my people and I moved to London to go to Central St. Martin's right after high school. Um So when I was there, it's the first time I'd really been in an educational setting with only creatives, and it was life-changing. I was like, "These are my people. I can't believe I haven't had the opportunity to be immersed in this," because I actually took music in high school, so you could choose music or art, and I was not good at music, so I don't know why I did that. I played viola for, like, 8 years in the orchestra, which got
Wow.
me nowhere. I
But
can't
maybe
even
maybe it, like, opened up that side of your brain, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
The whole problem who
yeah,
knows how that's contributed to
yes,
sort of
you
where you
never
are
know.
now.
Yeah, education is definitely, like, a series of choices and experiments, and you just kinda, like, have to find your way, and, so I used to take art at lunch. I would go actually do figure drawing. There was this like really cute guy who was like a few years younger than me in high school and he was like really into art. So he was always there at lunch. And my art teacher was like, "You should draw Alec. Like he'll be a great model for you." So I would like come in and draw him, which I wasn't mad about that. And it all worked out. But my high school art teacher was amazing, Madeline, and she helped me put together a portfolio to apply to Central St. Martin's, again, during, like, my lunch hours, and I ended up getting in, and I moved to London. So it was all a series of decisions. There was no one decision where I was like, "Okay, there's no turning back now." There's always a contingency, there's always the door was always left open. If this doesn't work out, if you don't like it, you can always do this other thing, and I think that is what allowed me to take all of these risks was they were pretty calculated risks, even though, from an outsider looking in, you look and you're like, how did you bet on yourself and take this huge leap of faith? It's really, when you're in the moment, it's really not one big decision. It's a million small decisions that get you to where you are. And the commitment to trusting your future self to continue to make those decisions. So I I enjoyed my time in London. I learned so much. I like to say I really learned how to think creatively because that's really the way they teach design in Europe is very conceptual. It's all about sketchbooking. It's kind of like if you were taking notes, they really grade your notes versus your finished product. Like, what did
Interesting.
you,
About the process.
yeah, what did you learn in the process of getting to the end goal, not what was the end goal? So I think that set the stage for my future education. So while I was in London, my family's very close. My parents are like, when are you moving back to the US? We miss you. London's so expensive. Do you really want to be so far from home? Like slowly chipping away at my guilt. And they're pretty good at convincing me of things. And I ended up applying to RISD while I was in London. One of my best friends from high school was at RISD, and he was like having the time of his life, and he's so successful now. I mean, I knew he was going to be, an amazing artist. I'm trusted him so much, and he was like, "Abby, I think you'd be really happy here. I think you should apply." So, I actually I went to RISD sight unseen. So I moved without ever going to Providence
Wow.
or anything, and I just took a chance, and I think it was an amazing move. So,
I love that. I
yeah.
absolutely love that. I want you to go back to something that you said a moment ago
Mhm.
about, um, making decisions and being true to yourself, really listening to yourself. Is there, a mantra or a particular process that you've gone through? How how did you know? Like, what was your what's your best advice for how you do that? How did you do that for yourself?
So, I think having a life advisory board is important. So, people that you trust to understand your values, that know you, that know your successes and failures, and really being vulnerable with a group of people that you can trust. And I think workshopping these decisions with other people that you trust, even if it was like two people, and going through cost benefit of these big decisions or even small decisions, um, and then walking out of those conversations with resolve and confidence and moving forward without fear that you're wrong, I think is my recipe. And I've been wrong a million times, but you can't move forward thinking or having fear that you will be wrong. I think it um, handicaps you being successful. So sometimes I think I trick myself into being as confident in my decisions. Um, but in a way, it's a blessing because you kind of have to move full steam ahead if you want to commit to something. Um, and be okay with the fact that it might not work out.
Yeah. Do you create backup plans as you're doing that so that you help to sort of navigate the fear?
Mhm. I never created backup plans that were formal, like, I'm definitely, in a lot of ways, a perfectionist, but I don't think I'm your typical type A person, like, I'm not planning contingencies and, like, making sure that if this doesn't work out, my other plan is, like, fully fleshed out. I think I always have an idea in the back of my mind of how I would pivot, and again, it kinda goes back to just trusting your future self that if something went wrong, you would be able to adjust. And so, I do think there's a reality of having other skill sets that, like, I think I could do a lot of other things, and I think I'm glad I paid attention in school and, didn't rule out every other career um, super early on because I think, now as a business owner, it's pretty amazing I can do math. Like I never thought I would need that. I'm doing, financial plans and, we're hiring a merchant and planner and I have to give her a project and I have to understand all of this financial planning for inventory, which is totally not what I'm good at, but at least I know enough to be dangerous. So I think there's merit in just putting in the work to know a lot of things so that if for some reason something doesn't work out, you know a lot of things and you can dig in deep somewhere else that you've already like started a little bit of education in.
Yeah.
So
I love that. So it sort of goes back to that sort of idea, something I talk about on this podcast a good bit, that I refer to as experience equity. But
Mm.
you're taking these experiences and always looking for new ways to deploy them. There's sort of no skill or no experience that goes to waste, including the bad ones, the ones that don't work out. You're collecting all of the things that you learned and all those experiences that you had and using those in different ways. I absolutely love that. Okay, one of the topics that I really want you to talk about, that I think is so interesting about your story is the path from maker, sort of the creative maker, where that's your primary focus, to founder, and how you get the balance right between the creative, which clearly was what attracted you in the first place, to the business owner and all the other skill sets involved in that. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about sort of your journey from maker to founder and then balancing those competing demands.
Yeah, this is a really hard shift for anyone to make. So I don't think people talk about this as much as they should in the creative industry because, again, you are taking a completely different skill set as an operator and marrying it with your creative zone of genius or however you want to say it. Like, what makes you special? What's your secret sauce? Why do people want to support your brand over somebody else's? So, yeah, great question. I think in part, this is something I've learned more recently looking back because sometimes it feels, again, like when you're in it, you're just making these small decisions and it's organically evolving into something. You're not like, okay, today I'm a designer, tomorrow I'm a business owner. So I think once you find your product market fit, um, and make sure that people want to own the things you're creating. So as a product owner, um, and to own it for the price that you're selling it at in the market that you're in. So it's it's almost like if you strip away all of the flowery things that make you different and you equate an Abbey Glass dress with a can of beans in the supermarket. Like, why is someone choosing that can of beans from that brand at that price point? And that is product market fit. So if people continue to choose you and come back to you and refer you and you are selling things because you're doing it best, it kind of makes the decision for you that this is a business and this is a scalable business. Once you find that alignment with product market fit, it's more about how to grow and how to market. So, marketing is something that I didn't have when I started my business. I didn't really know why I needed it. But once you decide to grow, you have to tell more people about it. And you have to tell potentially more people than you can talk to in one day. So you have to bring in a marketing team. So I think, there were a few expensive, long years of trial and error to try and find that, which is really hard. And I think committing, maybe every 6 months, like re-upping a commitment and maybe having one of those advisory people in your life be your accountability partner and be like, do I still want to do this? I mean, I had that conversation so many times over the last 10 years. Do I still want to do this? Is this still um, a good career path for me? do people still pick me over other people? What makes me special? And I think if you continuously improve that, it's almost like compounding interest. It's
Interesting.
like you're going to come out ahead, but you have to do it like with every decision you make, with every product line you launch, with every marketing decision, with every failure, like you just have to continue to ask that question of why you're here and what are you doing better, and do they like it? Do they not like it? Why don't they like it? Why do they like it? And I'm still doing that today. We did a customer survey last month and we're reviewing the results of it. And it's really cool to see why people shop with us and how they identify themselves, what they like about it, and also being open to feedback. I think that's when I talk to new founders, I think that's one thing I see in myself that maybe some people don't have is really thick skin
It can
and
be hard.
being able to be told, actually, the thing that you think is good, it's not doing it for me.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yep.
loved that, Bianca Gates in our conversation about birdies talked about, the incredible power of listening to your customer and how that made a big difference in terms of the pivot of their business. But at the same time, how incredibly difficult it was when somebody would basically say, "Your baby is ugly." Like,
Yes.
I don't like how your baby is built. This is your baby. This is your creative baby. She talked about how hard that was. Maybe talk about you said you have thick skin. At the same time, like, it can be really hard to hear feedback. Do you have a process or a filter or some way that you help to sort of get the balance so that the feedback that really is just negative, so negative and over the top, is not soul crushing?
Yes, this is hard and I am improving, but it's a really hard thing to continue to improve on as your business grows. So, I probably started having thicker skin than most people just because of the way I grew up, and I'm a middle child and I played sports and my parents are from New York, and just like all the direct communication in my household was the status quo. So I think that the way you grow up helps. I also think working with a coach has been really helpful for me. So,
Is that a business coach or a or
yeah,
a or a personal coach? Business
yeah.
coach.
So she's an executive coach, and I've been working with her for about 2 years now. And there's a really cool exercise that if anyone could do this on their own, I think you can look it up online. It's called parts work. Um, Parts, yes, and it's organizational psychology practice. And you basically try and understand all of the different layers of who you are as for me, it's as a leader and a business owner. And I have a lot of different sides to me, and you kind of identify them and learn how to let the appropriate part come to the forefront in the appropriate time that you need it. So, let's say I got some negative feedback or an employee's upset, or, you know, my one of them is called your personal balance leader, which is kind of like you're taking all the good parts of everyone. And then one I call my maestro. And that is like I have unbridled confidence. I'm walking into the room like I own the place. You know, just I'm an expert. And I don't feel that way all the time. I mean, most people have a lot of, um, second guess themselves, or, oh my God, I don't deserve this, or I got rejected because I'm just not good enough, or no one likes me, or, there's just always all of these things flying around in your head. But if you can kind of put that outfit on. I like to look at it as outfits.
I
You
love
put that
that.
outfit on, and my maestro is like, "Okay, this is me. I'm gonna take this one." Everyone else goes and sits outside, and that's kind of like how it's still you. It's more just like, this is the part of me that needs to deal with this versus I have another one called the rookie because I was so young when I started my business. And, like I walked into a lot of rooms saying, I don't know anything. Everyone in this room knows more than me. I don't deserve to be here. And what do I would pay people to help me that weren't really helping me because I just assumed that they knew more than me. Like
Right.
that's what
Right.
happens when you're 25 and you start a business. It's like you don't, you think everyone's an expert. Um, so it's been really cool to work on that with her, and I'm still not perfect at it, but it really helps with, um, allowing the part of yourself that you have trained. What I don't know what you called it. It was like equity, basically like learning
Experience
equity.
equity. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's letting that experience equity in a certain place shine when you show up for your business, because otherwise all of the, you know, maestro experience that I have gets, you know, put down to the bottom because I've got my rookie like telling, me that I should just roll over and this person's right. And, so I know that's like so far into, organizational psychology and leadership psychology, but I think there's another real need for that and for that to be talked about in especially creative led, founder led brands, because you don't learn these things when you're in art school or even in undergrad. Like if I went to just like a liberal arts undergrad, nobody's talking about this. I didn't go to business school. I don't even know if they talk about that in business school, but there's a real power in being able to control and like show up for your business the way that you need to. Cause you earned it, like I
Yeah.
feel like I earned it. And sometimes I'm like, man, I really need to like dig deep to make sure I show up in the way that I know I can.
Yeah. I love that. And I'm wondering, as you're talking about this, if this framework that you go through also helps you manage burnout to some degree, because it sounds like it really helps you dial in on those things that you do best. So helping you prioritize always the piece that is your maestro skill set. If you, I'm probably getting this wrong because I'm going to I'll include this in the show notes because I'm fascinated by what you just said. But if it helps you sort of automatically prioritize the things that really should be delegated because they're not your highest and best use. Am I getting that right? Is there any sort of relationship between managing burnout and sort of prioritizing those things that you're best at?
Yes, I think there's a ton of relationship because that was really the reason why I was seeking help and finding an executive coach, because I was feeling burned out. Um, I did feel like I needed to be controlling everything that was going on in my business. Um, I felt the weight of every negative thing that happened to the business on my shoulder. There was just like this heaviness. And I think even after being at the Southern Sea and having my mentor group and talking to other people, there is just a universal heaviness to owning a business. And I think there's this real benefit in being able to compartmentalize, not in a bad way where you're ignoring things, but saying you're kind of like a coach with a sports team and you're like putting in the player that needs to be playing at that moment and letting the other players rest because they're there to be valuable to you. Like my rookie's there to alert me to anything that may not be right. And sometimes it's right. Like maybe somebody doesn't have my best interest in mind, or maybe I shouldn't trust that person because why would they want to work with me? Or, there's always these like, there's a reason that those things come into your head. So you have to trust it, but you have to say, thank you for that comment. I'll take it into consideration, but I'm the one driving right now. So
Exactly. And that driving analogy, I think, is key because you're the one who's driving your car, not the
yeah,
voice inside your head,
yeah,
whichever voice you may choose to
yeah,
sort of hear or listen to, but taking that as input, but making sure that you remain in the
yeah.
driver's seat of your situation. I love that.
Exactly. So when it comes to prioritization and trying to be less burned out, I think what I've identified is it's not necessarily the tasks, it's the competing, like, constant reassessment of, am I doing the thing that I should be doing? And that takes so much energy to constantly be assessing and cost benefit analysising and um running that. It's like you're running a report in your head like 24/7. Am I doing the right thing? Am I in the right place? Am I So I think if you can use your parts and put the right person in charge, that person has a really easy time prioritizing because they know exactly. So if my maestro is in charge, my maestro knows exactly what I should be doing right now. If I say, "Rookie, it's your time to go in," my rookie knows exactly my rookie's like, "I'm gonna protect everything. I'm not gonna let I'm not gonna let anyone in. I don't trust anyone. Everything could go wrong." So, I also have a funny one that I haven't quite, like, figured out where it comes in, but I have my average Joe. That has been something I've really been trying to figure out because when you're a fashion designer and you're an entrepreneur and you you kind of have a very different life than most. Like, I'll go watch the Super Bowl with people and everyone's like, "That's a weird job. What do you do all day?" Like, I cannot relate to me. I don't have anything to talk about with them. I didn't go to an SEC school. Like, I don't even know the rules of football. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, "What what am I doing here?" And sometimes I love, we have an amazing group of friends, but I sometimes just need to be like, I love to sit around and talk about nothing and drink beer and just enjoy people's company. And I just need to be okay with that. Like, there's people can be contradictions. Like, you can be two things at the same time.
Absolutely.
So I really, that's like a funny one that doesn't have to do with business, but it's like, I need that recharge moment where I'm not, my identity of me in my business is not like one and the same. It's like, I'm just a person with awesome friends hanging out on a Sunday.
Yeah.
So,
And I think all those dimensions, I think sometimes we lose sight of the fact that all those dimensions are actually what makes us authentic. They're not in contradiction as it relates to your authenticity. They are part of what makes you this very complicated, multidimensional human being. And when you narrow down too much on I am a this, I am a that, you miss the opportunity to sort of get the benefit of all of that nuance, which is really what makes you who you are. So I love what you just said. I think that's beautiful. And I love this framework, which I am going to jump on, as I said before. I love that. Um, I was thinking about, sort of how your business has evolved, how you're meeting your customer maybe now differently than you did when you first started. Maybe talk a little bit about how it's evolved and kind of where you are now versus where you started. You obviously started out doing custom things and then it grew into what we now know as Abbey Glass. But maybe talk about how it's continued to evolve.
so when I first started, I knew the customer intimately. I knew how I knew her. She was a friend of this person or, someone's aunt, or there was always, 3 degrees of separation. My customer now is somebody who finds us through an Instagram ad and says, "Oh my gosh, this is something I've been looking for. I've never heard of this before. Now I want to come discover." Um, so there's so much separation between the customer in a lot of ways, and that's why we've opened all of our retail stores. There's something really magical about retail and being able to create that one-on-one connection with your customer, and it is amazing. Even just when I'm traveling to our stores and I'm there for a day or 2 days, it's amazing to see new customers walk in the store that have said, "Oh my gosh, I saw this brand online, and I've been dying to come into this store. I live in, you know, Connecticut, and I'm in Charleston for vacation, and I just, like, made it a point to come in here because I couldn't wait to see this, brand and discover more.
Touch
So
it and try it on and actually get the
yeah.
feel of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the in-person element of our brand is really intended to bridge the gap between that kind of distance that we have now. Um, and also I think social media is something we're really trying to focus on, and LinkedIn for 2026, because it's just another layer of connection that we can make with our customers and that I can make with them. Because I do think that being a founder led brand, my job is very much to be the face of the company and to talk about what makes us special and how we're solving our customers' problem, and why did we design this dress to look like this? What are all the decisions that I made, and why should you trust me, and why am I good at my job? Like I still have to prove myself, and I don't feel like in any way I assume that she's um that the trust is there. Like I still feel like we have to build the trust with every single customer. And so it just takes a lot more to create that relationship now than it used to, because when you're in person with the founder, it's pretty easy to find out what I'm all about, find out what you're all about, and how can I serve you? Um, Now there's more steps and distance, and so it just takes more tools and more people. But I think we're doing a really good job at slowly iterating to give her that same connection when we have so many channels that we sell on. It's why I still do tons of in-person events with Dillard's. So we've been working with Dillard's for a little over 2 years, and it's been amazing. We've scaled up to 75 stores with them. We started in 25 as just, it was just a test, and it's been so well received. And I would say like once a quarter or pretty frequently, I'm going to Dillard stores to meet the salespeople, to meet customers, to talk about my brand, because it's that connection. And I think even when you look at big box where you're like, oh, that's like as far as you can be from the customer because it's B2B and it's, mass market and all these things, like that's not the way good department stores are run anymore. They are a window into something more intimate. And which I think Dillard's does an amazing job at this, they are creating moments for people to discover brands and then allowing them to know more about them and dig deeper through all of these activations and events that we're doing with them, um, and storytelling. So it's it's challenging, but it's also how you grow and maintain that trust that made people want to shop with you in the first place and work with you in the first place, that helped scale my business at the beginning. So
Yeah. I love that. I absolutely love that. Abby, I have loved this conversation. I've loved twinning with you this morning. For
yes.
anybody who's actually watching the podcast on YouTube versus listening to it, we showed up wearing almost matching outfits, just ironically. I have really loved this. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. This was so fun.